Great, we are live in our YouTube page as well as with the participants who are joining. Thank you everybody for coming to this last and 10th session of the SDG Learning Center in 2022. On behalf of UNITAR and UNDSA, it has been a pleasure to discover all these tools and knowledge that has been shared by the partners. We are now pass the floor to the organizers who will be starting. Mr. Davis Vanda, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone, and very welcome to you to session number 10 and the last one, as we are taught. I'm one of the representatives. I'm representing Generation Amazing, and I'll be in charge of part 3 of our discussions today. Davis Banda, I'm an academic advisor for Generation Amazing, and I'll talk more about that later on when we come to part 3. I'll hand over to Heather.
Thank you so much, Davies. And we all are so excited to be here. And of course, the HLPF topic of the day is vision of civil society, leaving no one behind in recovering better. And that's exactly what we're going to focus on today. In the SDG 2030 part of it, we're going to repeat an interactive design workshop that we established in March 2022. We've got an amazing group of young activists and legal experts here who are going to do a live social hackathon, and we are totally looking forward to participants joining us in that. So it's going to be a very, very wonderful and interesting experience. And next, I would like to pass to Mauricio.
Hi, Davies. Hi, Heather. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to organize this session, the last session. And also it is a pleasure to have very many panelists to discover topics related to human security, organized crime, and the role of youth, and also a focus on gender. The University for Peace is not alone in the organization of this session. We have two other organizations that will lead the part 1 of this session, that is the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the International Institute for Strategic Studies. So since the University for Peace, UNODC, and the YSS will start this session, the part 1, so now I invite Professor Maria Teresa from the University for Peace to our part 1 entitled Introduction to Human Security and Organized Crime. Professor Maria Teresa, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mauricio, and welcome all to this session. It's my pleasure to start. We are based in Costa Rica, so everyone who is saying from where you are from, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Pakistan, is also welcome to this international session. And Professor Maria Teresa Garrido, and I will be talking a little bit on human security and the right to freedom of expression, and you will see many connections on the topic of today's session. So first of all, I want to start by providing a concept. We are a university. We use academia and concepts to actually relate all of the things that we're seeing and studying. So this is from the General Assembly, the Resolution 66290, and it says, human security is an approach to assist member states in identifying and addressing widespread and cross-cutting challenges to the survival, livelihood, and dignity of their people. What do we do here at UPeace is basically understand what are the threats to human security, what are the threats to peace, and analyze conflicts in order to not only assist member states, but assist society in general. And this is why this panel, it will be like very interactive, and you will see different ways and different sides to human security. And I want to start with the idea of identifying and addressing widespread and cross-cutting challenges. Please notice that it's not about understanding understanding just conflict and what is going on, but the challenges to actually achieving this human security for the survival, livelihood, and dignity of their people. So it goes for really understanding what is going on with the population, what are the threats, what are the attacks, what are the challenges that they are facing in order to address them, and build a policy, build coalitions, build these organizations that can ensure that people is free from fear and scarcity. So why am I connecting these to the right to freedom of expression? As you may know, we all use our right to freedom of expression every single day. We are expressing, we're seeking information, we're receiving information, but there is a particular group that is especially targeted and attacked by the exercise of the right to freedom of expression, and those are journalists. The journalists are specific people who are constantly exercising the right to freedom of expression, and in this digital era, it's an integral part of understanding challenges to human security. But this group is threatened by organized crime and by other groups that are in power, and the statistics are alarming. And I want to use this time to actually share a little bit of what is going on to this very specific group of people that are attacked for the exercise of their profession. So these statistics are coming from the Committee to Protect Journalists. This is an NGO that has been working on the protection of journalists all over the world. And from those of you who are connecting from different parts from Africa and Europe might know their work because they have been promoting this, and especially in Latin America too, for those of you who are saying, where are you from? And these statistics are worldwide. They include information from all over the world from 1992 to this year. The latest updates are from last week, I think, if they didn't it incremented the number today or yesterday before I captured these from their website. And I want to mention that this is just the tip of the iceberg when we talk about the protection of a specific group. We have 2,161 journalists and media workers killed in this period, but as I was mentioning, this is only the tip. Why? Because killing a person is the ultimate way of silencing and censoring the communication and attacking the news. So why am I focusing in this group? For several reasons. First, all of us need information to understand what is going on in terms of human security, to build alliances, and to better protect those groups that are facing different threats. And the journalists are the ones bringing this information to increase the conversation, to expand our knowledge on the topics that as a society are important. But as coming back to the idea of the concept of human security, what are the challenges that we have? And I want to discuss these three main challenges, because what does it mean for the state and for us who are willing to operate and work and cooperate with different organizations. So the first one is a challenge to protecting a specific group of people, and in this case, journalists that are targeted by organized crime, by normal violence, by war. And those of you who are in conflict situations, you know that is protecting this specific group of people is a huge challenge for the state, in which we can cooperate and use this concept of human security to integrate different aspects. Then we also have challenges to building trust in communication processes. And why is this important? Because everything is about the information we receive, we resend. So everything that we see in terms of hate speech, discriminatory speeches, fake news are against distrust in the communication process. And that is exactly what we have to achieve as a group, and how we can cooperate between us, because it threatens not only human security, but this specific group of people that are operating in the country. And the third is the challenges to guarantee the legitimacy of the judiciary and other state institutions. And maybe you can see that this is kind of disconnected from the previous one, but what happens is that the majority of the cases against journalists are impugned. So if we add this idea to a conflict where institutions are not operating as they should be operating, when they are permeated by corruption and organized crimes, the challenges to keep the system going as we know it and obtain the protection that is needed is a big challenge to the state. And then again, it's an area in which we can cooperate by seeing a specific group of people promoting the protection of the right to freedom of expression and linking that, creating the linkages between the state, the social organization, institutions, and our activities and challenges can be combined and actually build upon the idea of the protection of the right to freedom of expression, the protection of journalists, and building up with the idea of how we can ensure human security. So with that, I end. I think I already have the time. So thank you for this opportunity, and I pass back to Dr. Mauricio Vieira.
Thank you, Maria Teresa. Excellent points. And to move on the discussion about the capacity of the state in face of organized crime, I invite Dr. Irene Mia, Senior Fellow for Security, Conflict and Development and Latin America of the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Irene, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mauricio, and good evening to everybody from London. It's nice to see there is a lot of fellow Italian in the chat. So great to be here with you, and really happy to be part of this very timely conversation and needed conversation on the multiple impact of organized crime on human security. It has been incredibly interesting to listen to my fellow panelists discussing on the impact of organized crime and on freedom of the press. I think it is important to really highlight the global importance and the global urgency to look at transnational organized crime and all its different impacts on repercussion in terms of stability and security in the strict sense of security, but also in terms of human security. In our work monitoring conflict and fragility across the world, we are made aware over and over of the strong impact organized crime and violence have on state fragility, as well as the vicious circle between the two elements. In a way, organized crime prosper in fragile context and create more fragility as they prosper. So there is really this kind of very difficult and hard to break vicious circle that it is at the center of the problem. What we've seen that is increasing criminal groups and non-state armed groups, as we call them, across the world are acquiring a quasi-state role in their areas of controls. They're increasingly challenging the state monopoly and use of force. They're also providing basic services to the population, and also they ensure some governance of sort, some criminal governance. In some way collecting taxes, enforcing rules, their rules of the game. So what we are seeing more and more is in the context of fragile states, it's really this kind of overlapping between legal governance and criminal governance with a lot of consequences in terms of really human security and rule of law. So those criminal groups are increasingly feeling, I would say, a market need, so to speak, or to say it in a better way, an institutional vacuum, which is left by state and institutions which are either inefficient or whose reach is not obviously large enough to really reach all the part of their territories. This applies to state group, what we call non-state armed group with a specific political and ideological motivation who wants to take over the state. But it's also applied to criminal groups increasingly, which have no real particular political ideology or political motivation. As you know, drug trafficking organization in Latin America, which as Mauricio mentioned is my area of expertise. We see that in Latin America, we see that not only Latin America, we see it also in Africa and in other areas of the world, in the Western Balkans, and so on and so forth. We have seen a lot during the pandemic. That has been in full display. We have seen criminal groups enforcing lockdown measures, distributing food and medicine, and really, in a way, supplementing the state in its basic functions. It has been particularly striking to notice in some cases the fact that even the state have been acknowledging their role as kind of a parallel governance structure. An example of this, for instance, has been And I don't know if you remember the fact that the Brazil health minister at the onset of the pandemic has called publicly for a dialogue with criminal actors to support COVID-19 efforts in area with little or no healthcare provisions. So it's quite striking when the state is actually acknowledging the presence of criminal group as a political actor almost. In conflict-ridden environment, in a more traditional sense, where there is a war going on, we are also seeing, and we have seen in the past, armed group, non-state armed group, increasingly replacing the state in its basic functions, and leveraging these as a tool to build legitimacy with the local population. There are countless examples of that. We have seen the Taliban distributing lands in exchange for support and legitimacy. We also see in Latin America the FARC guerrillas and protecting the environment as a way to gain legitimacy also with local population. So I guess the increasingly quasi-state role of criminal groups means that they can entrench themselves better in the social fabric of a country and also gain legitimacy with local population. This is made possible by state fragilities and limitation and also resulting in more fragility. In that vicious circle that I alluded earlier on, which is really hard to break because one thing endangers more of the other. So in the current context of increased socioeconomic vulnerability and also increasingly weaker states, post-pandemic, but also currently in the context of the Ukraine war and its consequences in terms of food security and cost of living, especially in fragile state, we will see this political role of criminal groups, I think, continue or even expanding. And this is going to have deleterious repercussion on the rule of law, on stability and security, not just at the state level where it happens, but in general at global level. Because as I said, more and more the transnational reach of those organizations, it's really having a global impact. I would say another consideration, the quasi-state role of those groups is increasingly transforming them into political actors to be reckoned with by the state. These beg the questions on how states should interact and engage with those actors, and also may prompt the exploration of different approaches to organized crime, which are different from the current prevailing iron fist policies. Negotiating with criminal group, not only to curb violence as we have seen happening so far, but also to address specific needs, including, for instance, as I said, the provision of services, could be something that could be seen increasingly as a viable option by government. But this, of course, will have very important consequences in terms of legitimacy, will come at the expenses of the legitimacy of the institution, and can lead to only temporary or elusive at best results, especially in the context of fragilized institutions that we are observing at the moment. Of course, addressing root causes of violence would be the solution, we really want to create sustained inclusive growth. This is a solution, but obviously it's also very difficult to implement. I would say that government should probably work more as a regional or global entity to address the transnational and flexible character of those organized criminal groups and illicit economies which actually sustain them. So we really need more and more kind of regional and coherent approaches and solutions, starting with how to tackle illicit financial flows and money laundering, which is obviously, you have to follow the money, right? Where there is no money, there is no really international crime in a way. This includes also the obviously cryptocurrency, which is becoming more and more an issue in terms of illicit flows. At the same time, I think, and that's the question and what we are addressing today, and also the theme of our session, I think at the same time, building multi-stakeholder partnership is very important with the private sector, with the civil society, and in particular, creating opportunity for the youth, which for their natures are, I would say, the segment most vulnerable to criminal group, and also the segment most vulnerable to forced criminality. As we are seeing that youth unemployment rates is going up across the world, of course, the criminal opportunity will appear more and more appealing. So it's going to be very important to create opportunities and create a change of cultures and really work, you know, at the micro level in that respect. And I'm looking forward to hear more from our colleagues in the panel today. Thanks, Mauricio.
Thank you very much, Irene. And also, just to continue on this part, I would call now Maria Viela Alonso, Regional Officer from the StarZone project and UNODC. Maria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Professor Mauricio. Nice to see you all again. I'm Maria Viela. I'm working as a regional advisor of UN StarZone project in Central America and the Caribbean. I'm excited. I have been invited to be part of a panel with so many different organizations and talented professionals. I resonated very much with these comments of Irene about the state fragility and governance structure to fight organized crime. My main interest is advising to member countries on gender mainstreaming and human rights approach to migrant smuggling. When I was younger, I could say I was part of a younger generation of police, and management in the police had asked me if I was an NGO. And then it happened, and the NGOs didn't fancy me very much because I was actually a police officer, right? So later on time, I found this was actually my strength, and having different tools in my mindset helped me a lot actually to understand and advise about the crime from a more holistic approach of intervention. In the next 5 minutes, I would like to share some of our achievements of a StarZone project in Latin America and the Caribbean with you, related to the SDGs 17. And so I am going to look at number 1, the access to technologies and innovation. Number 2, how SDG 17 is connected with other SDGs, such as SDG 5. Number 3, interagency cooperation and among UN programs. Let me start by describing a little bit of our project. It's a global project of the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. The project aims to counter migrant smuggling and protect the lives and rights of migrants across routes leading to North America and crossing multiple countries in South Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America and the Caribbean. StarZone is founded by the government of Canada and inspired by the principles of their feminist foreign policy. Let me share a few key points about number 1, the access to technologies and innovation. The international cooperation and access to technology and innovation is key to knowledge sharing between law enforcement and prosecutors. We are using the new UNODC Hub of Knowledge to enrich the access to new technologies of law enforcement. We enhance South-South cooperation, and we are devising new activities with the UNODC GLOW Act program to enhance also the access to new technologies to women in law enforcement and contribute to close the gender gap of police women representation in international cooperation matters. With our StarZone allies in the Ministry of Public Security from Costa Rica and with the Ministries of Foreign Affairs from Honduras and Republican Dominican, we are moving forward in overcoming barriers to equality. We are mentoring on aggravated migrant smuggling when women migrants are victims of sexual and gender-based violence crimes. This is an ongoing discussion in the international arena. SDG 10, everybody, everywhere is equal, regardless of their race, sexuality, or social background. We advocate for better rights for all marginalized communities in society. Irregular migrants or smuggled migrants, they face significant challenge in the origin, transit, and destination countries. StarZone, we aim to promote the rule of law at the national and international levels, and we advocate for equal access to justice for all, including women migrants who have been abused and abandoned. The final point from my end is about interagency cooperation and among UN programs. With the STARSOM project, we touch upon the idea of sustainable development and human security, particularly in Costa Rica, Honduras, and Republican Dominican. We are achieving to develop sustainable networks and alliances with law enforcement on migrant smuggling, aggravated migrant smuggling, and new innovations like focusing, as my colleague said before, on financial crimes, or devising also a new multidisciplinary task force which can support prosecutors in a more holistic investigation of migrant smuggling cases. I think we are pioneering on this. We encourage the project to be owned by the community, and I foresee it will have a sustainable future. STARSOM, we encourage and promote the co-leadership of our activities with implementing member countries. Peace and security is key to sustainable development. That is why I always advocate for our STARSOM project, collaborate with other UN agencies to understand and promote a more holistic approach to crime from an humanitarian perspective and also as a criminal justice matter. Our main point is how do we promote the access to justice of migrants in transit, women and men who have been smuggled, abandoned, and abused. In summary, I like to say that we advocate for gender equality in our project, for partnership with a strong law enforcement, community leaders, and UN agencies, and stress the use of technologies and binational meetings to promote international cooperation. I like to once again thank you for this initiative and teamwork preparing the event. It's been lovely. I'm looking forward to hearing from the other presenters. Thank you for your attention, and Mauricio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Maria Teresa. And also I want to say thank you to Emma that provided support to the organization of this session. And now I invite my colleague, Heather, to present the part 2. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mauricio, and many, many thanks to those amazing presentations. That was very inspiring and extremely informative. Thank you so much. So what I would like to ask is for the individuals who will be in the next session, if you could please turn on your cameras. So basically, we are so delighted to be here. We had, just as a very, very brief rundown, in March for the International Women's Day, SDG2030.me had a Changemaker Challenge in which we invited 22 global young people who were activists and just amazing thinkers to come together in a design thinking social hackathon focused on building better regarding SDG 5. And it was so impactful and so amazing that we have invited some of them to come back here today to replicate that, except with a different question. Now, what I would like to say is that the toolkit for this entire workshop is actually freely available. I see the amazing Madalena Bot is posting in the chat. The toolkit for all of this is freely available. Just to let you know, what it is in essence to pick an SDG target, then to humanize the context. That's the part that often gets lost. And you humanize the context. For example, we did this by creating personas, user stories, and then we created an MVS, or a minimum viable solution. And that also was a critical element. I'm going to put the definition of a minimum viable solution into the chat right now. And then based on that, what we did is we focused on finding solutions, but in a very interesting way. We started at 2030 saying that the problem was solved, and then we worked backwards. Okay, if 2030 the problem is solved, well, what has to be in place in 2027? What has to be in place in 2024? And then we come to now. And so it's a very different approach. Now, I was very inspired by all of the speakers that we had, but I think what we will do is we will follow up with what Maria Biela said, and you were talking about the intersection between SDG 5 and SDG 17. And so let's use that, just to continue the thread, let's use that as a jumping off point. So for the amazing panelists, first, thank you so much for your courage in doing this live show. And by the way, you will find the bios of all of our 5 panelists in the chat. But based on what Maria had said, I wrote an MVS, and I will put it into the chat right now. So I'll read it out loud. So by 2030, enhanced cooperation among crucial entities has led to a measurable increase. Oh dear, I lost it. We had a lot of them. A measurable increase in the creation and implementation of gender-sensitive policy on human trafficking. Let's say that that's in place in 2030, okay? So now your job is to work backwards. What we will do is first we'll focus on 2024 and 2027. And what I would like to do, it won't be, everything won't go through me. What I'll do is just start off with one of you, and then if you can hand it to the next one and hand it to the next one, and then we will go that way. Keep it to maybe 90 seconds each, okay? Okay, so here we go. So let's start with you, Noor Barakat. What do you think, in order to achieve this MVS, what has to be in place by 2027, 2024? Oh, and by the way, what I should say, and pardon me, Noor, we also have a team who's madly going to be writing all of this on a brainstorm board. And then we will show you the brainstorm board when it's finished, and then we will go to focusing on how to reach these results today. But first, Noor, 90 seconds, the floor is yours, and then please hand it to one of the colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here, and it's a challenge to use the 90 seconds wisely. So I have to say, first of all, I just want to introduce that we know that there are entities in place to tackle this problem. As we know, the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime and protocol to prevent and suppress and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children. There's the ILO Convention concerning forced labor, the IOM, and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. So as we can see, there are a lot of flaws in this regard. The problem is the implementation. This is the issue. And for that, from a public policy point of view, I would say in 2024, what also in regards to the migration aspect, and I was so thrilled to listen to Dr. Maria. She touched upon many points that were in my head already. So I would suggest that the gender mainstreaming in migration policies should be adopted. Also, the empowering women by providing legal, especially legal info and consultation about their rights as survivors of such crimes. In addition to, just give me 1 second, please. Also, as prevention tools, training and education, mainly capacity building for women, especially in vulnerable areas such as post-conflict areas, is crucial for tackling the problem. And that will pave the way, if you ask about 2027, will pave the way for establishing a monitoring and assessment unit for measuring impact, but basically involving people and persons of lived experiencing. And this is the most important thing. And also to initiate a global unit, to establish this unit to provide this legal info and consultation about migration. Mainly, the most important thing is to provide translation capacity, because that's also a problem that makes a lot of biases along the process. So this is some of the points, and I've been talking a little bit too much. I would ask Starry maybe, what do you think, Starry? What ways to promote this measurable impact in 2024, 2027, in your opinion?
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here as well. So we are looking in 3 different levels. In my opinion, we have macro, and then the micro one. So we have here North, we have heard that North talks a lot about how we can do it in a community-based area, but I would also like to zoom out a little to see how we can do it in a national arena, and then we can collaborate it internationally. So to promote prevention of human trafficking, we definitely need multilateral cooperation, and then strengthen the community-based project to promote social harmony and make people less vulnerable to trafficking. For example, we need to work on discouraging the demand that foster all forms of exploitation and that leads to human trafficking, and requiring government to take positive steps addressing all these underlying circumstances. We're talking about a teenager dropping out of school or having teenage gangs. So we need that to do it in a national level to be able to tackle the problem from the very beginning. We also need entities to be encouraged to collaborate, undertaking different researches, sharing information. So if you're only keeping all the information to your own research knowledges, then we can't actually build a global community that actually helps with transnational organized crimes as well. Of course, we talk a lot about promoting education, but what actually we need to do is that we also need home education in a way that parents at home already try to have a better conversation with their children and do some measurements at home that to be able to prevent them to fall into whatever kind of trap that they might be facing. And we talk about a country need to establish a national anti-trafficking body. So that will be, if that will be established by 2024, then we can have international cooperation by 2027 as well. And that takes a lot of different communication between different entities, NGOs, governmental agencies. So I think I'm also running out of time. Last but not least, I also want to mention that we need recover victims and the public to be able to invite it to suggest and provide feedbacks in any kind of policy, in any steps of policy making, and be able to monitor the implementation. So passing on, maybe Anna, what kind of gender sensitive factors need to be in place by 2024 and 2027?
Hi, thanks. First of all, I'm so excited to be here with all these amazing people. As Maria Viola and Noel said, I'm agree with them that we need to include more women in the decision-making bodies, and also mainstream the gender and feminist perspective in all the decisions that international and national institutions make regarding to prevent and address human trafficking. Is definitely a first step that we need to take in a short time, talking about 2024. Also, I believe that we need to keep generating data about the gender differentiate impact between women, girls, men, young men, because, for example, we know that there are a lot of victims of domestic servitude that are usually women, but on the other hand, we know that a lot of men are victims or forced work in the construction industry. So what is behind of this phenomenon? We know that there are gender differentiating between all these two cases, but I think that keep generating more data, it's going to help to address this kind of issues. Also, in a short and midterm, talking about 2024 and 2027, I believe that it is important to make a global campaign to not categorize that trafficking on women, it's always sex trafficking, because we know that most of the time women are victims of sex trafficking, but it's not in all the cases. In other cases, they are also women are victims or other kinds of forced work or domestic work or even forced crimes. So if we always talk that women and girls are victims automatically of sex trafficking, I think that we are losing all this information that is also super important. And also, I think that I know that this is a huge challenge and it's like really difficult to address, but we can start to think in a medium and long term that work in general adequate work conditions, because this is crucial and definitely is a huge challenge. But according with the global report of trafficking, more than 50% of victims of human trafficking have economic needs at a pre-existing factor. So we know that this is really related with the human trafficking. And I know that it's a huge challenge, but I believe that we start to think more and more in this. So I know that I'm on time. So I want to know what Marwan, how do you think that we can address human rights violations such as torture and arbitrary detention in long and medium term?
Firstly, good evening, everyone. And wow, that was incredible, dear Anna. Secondly, thanks for the brilliant question. I believe the human rights situation in the world are being very much impacted severely by the conflicts and the crisis worldwide. This have encouraged the national governments to commit human rights violation for many rights. As for example, the right for a fair trial, the right of freedom from torture and inhuman treatment. This violation might luckily be a reason for exploiting women or children, more forced labor or any kind of human trafficking. What really needed to be changed is the way that we are visualizing the type and factors of human trafficking in today's world. The women do not need to be forced by material power and arms to meet the crime of trafficking. In some circumstances, the fearness and the feel of unsafe and insecure would be very much enough. As in a recent case, a family who fled from a country to another by illegal means just to secure a safe life. On the other side of the foreigner country, we're pushing them back to hell by their own hands, by their own feet. However, the story started when the family decided to stay in the country illegally, under cover from the local authority, which means, in other words, living in the shadow. And that will pretty much jeopardize the whole family for being exploited and to be taken advantage of them by gangs and other bodies who are familiar with their weaknesses. So to conclude, we don't need a hotline from the police for complaining regarding human trafficking, but what actually needed is creating means and path to approach them. And here I think I'm gonna hold the floor to Afnan, who I think have an answer for what do you think, Afnan, about the refugee and the IDP issues connected this, and what related factors have to be in place by, let's see, 2024, 2027?
Thank you, Marwan, and thank you for the panelists. I couldn't agree more of what they have said. So I would like to just echo what Noor has said about the people with lived experience and the importance of including them in the process of designing durable solutions. I think the responsibility here lies on the international community, states, civil society to create those channels where the most impacted population, I would say women in the time of war and crisis, can feel safe to exchange their feedback and to receive information as well. And also I think what is urgently needed in time of crisis and war and conflicts is what Steri and Anna have shared about the importance of rapid access to socioeconomic rights. So from my experience in some parts of Eastern Africa, the majority of the households are women. So I think supporting them in accessing those socio-economic rights would save them from being vulnerable to be exploited by traffickers or to seek unsafe / unorganized migration routes. So maybe here I would like to ask Kristen, what kinds of organized crime factors you think would need to be addressed?
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. Concerning organized crime, one has to consider that it's highly adaptable and able to respond to all sorts of changes quickly and effortlessly. It's basically a well-oiled and calibrated machine. On the contrary, the institutions battling it are not working in such an effective way. For instance, while I was in the Austrian prosecutor's office, I once requested information from an international institution and waited 2 months to receive it. According to my superiors, this should be considered a win because you received the information. Normally, such inquiries are left unanswered. However, 2 months for an answer in organized crime is an eternity. It's every second counts, and you can save lives if you act more quickly. Thus, a more effective and organized cooperation has to be established. So in order to reach our goal by SDG, by 2027, a platform should be created where information can be shared easily between these different institutions and quickly. This digital platform should also have like localized components, such as first response teams who help investigate and report in standardized ways. As implementation is key for such a platform, it also has to ensure a large-scale participation. And this should be done maybe by tied to existing diplomatic agreements. So by 2024, research should be conducted and an analysis how we can incorporate that. As well, international seminars should be created for different national institutions to exchange experience and knowledge on tackling organized crime and to assure a better knowledge and cooperation. So yeah, that's it from me. And I think we'll be moving on to the mood board from what I've understood.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Christian. And oh my goodness, thank you so much for those amazing ideas. So right now we've got the team creating the brainstorm board. However, I think I would like to add a couple of points to what you said. It was amazing. We had that great presentation from Maria Teresa at the start talking about media and the dangers that journalists face, but we also need to think of how important media is in terms of these areas. For one, just in terms of building political will and also sharing information that actually needs to be done. And so that would be one element to deal with both in 24 and 27. But also, you know, the SDGs are a roadmap. And so how could the SDGs be used? Now, we had talked about the connection between SDG 5 and 17, but, you know, we can predict as the climate change, you know, creates refugees who then are going to be trafficked, you know, or education clearly is linked, lack of education, or as what Anna was saying, connecting labor rights. And so you can actually use the SDGs as a roadmap also to find solutions. And the last thing in terms of implementation, and I thought those were really, really good points that you raised, you know, another thing is you can just connect this to mandatory reporting, such as the SDG reporting. And so for the platforms, for example, so as I've been talking, I think the Miro board is finished. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to share a visual image of what you just said, and then we're going to get to the hardest part in our last 5 minutes here. So I'm going to share my screen and let us see. So this is a visual image of what you said. So we'll start over here. So there's our may I confirm, can everybody see the screen? Can you see the screen? Perfect. Okay, so there's our MVS. Now, these were the things that you were talking about for 2027. And for the most part, you were talking about platforms and frameworks and things like that, which would make total sense. Yeah, okay. And then in order to achieve that, then we come over here. You had specific target groups, and then you created specific target for them. And then right over here, you were talking about, yeah, this was really cool what you guys were saying, talking about creating the national frameworks, but the importance of having those with lived experience. And also in terms of, you know, what is the impact on women? What is the impact on sexual diversity? So let's say if this is where we had been by 2024, and you've already got the ideas in your head, now we come to the single most difficult part, and that is 2030 starts today. You know, we can't wait. And so what I would like to do then is just open up your mics, and so it's not one by one, just throw ideas out for what you think should happen now in order to have 2024 and 2027. Now, before we start, what I want to say is we highly encourage people also to put notes in the chat. What we're going to do is to build this brainstorm board, turn it into an interactive virtual lesson, and then post it online to be freely available. And that will be available on August 1st, because it's the day after the World Day Against Human Trafficking. And so we will incorporate the ideas that you put into the chat. Please go ahead. But for now, I would like to, in closing, ask our esteemed team if you can just jump in and say what has to happen today in order to reach some of these goals. Who goes first?
I can go. I think that definitely we need to strengthen the support, including financial support to all by international agencies, to all these local NGOs that work not only in the prevention and attention to human trafficking, but also in other issues related with the prevention of human trafficking, as I said, like in labor rights or in domestic violence, or even in business and human rights. So I think that definitely the support of local NGO is a key.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Now we've got literally 4 minutes. So who's going to jump in fast?
I'm gonna jump in here, Heather. Thank you. I think in today's, I think we should ensure accountability and the rule of law for victims of torture and other violation of human rights. And here accountability is not just about prosecuting the perpetrators, but also to ensure victims do not feel unfair and unsafe in their home countries. We need to ensure to provide them with compensation and also rehabilitation for those victims in order not to encourage them to migrate illegally and potentially putting them at the risk of trafficking.
I love the emphasis on prevention. That's always important. Okay, who's next?
I can jump in. Yes, and also in relation to what Marwan was saying, again, as prevention tools, I believe that the enforcement and the adaptation of the gender mainstreaming should take place, and that relies in the cooperation again between the OECD, the IOM, and all governments. If we ensure that there are legal ways for more women to arrive in safe places, that will take away the possibility of deception and manipulation. Also, the education through hybrid methods is also very important in the areas of post-conflict countries, for example, because they are the most vulnerable for such deception, for such crimes. So providing this will provide also hope for them and also preventing basically the crime.
Yeah, so I think we talk a lot about how to communicate or how to collaborate between different governmental agencies or NGOs or even internationally. But I think there's something missing, that we need a facilitation. So a platform or a global community where we can bring everyone together, where everyone is welcome to join, especially when we're talking about all this agency together, and to ensure every part of the way when the victims needs to be returned to home country or when the victims are found in different country, how are they being able to transport, or how are they going to be protected, and how are they going to recover? It's a whole journey. So we need this path to be ensured that there's a platform, there's a community that we can support this.
I also think that corruption at a national level at institutions should be addressed, because these criminal organizations have roots in all the different institutions. So further background check, financial checks should be done to the employees to ensure that everything is done properly and that people can rely on these institutions to help them in the end, and not just to cover up information.
So Afnan, would you like to say anything?
I would like to add to what Noor has said also. And then I would say we need to strengthen the role of the legal think tank, because I believe there is a gap of data and information regarding to the conflict and post-conflict area. So I would say more technical support and fund for the legal think tank.
Well, all that I can say is this, and I think I can also speak for Lessin, who is the executive director of the International Forum for Understanding. Everything that we do is built on intergenerational dialogue, and you could not have inspired me more with your ideas and your flexibility and amazing things. So thank you so much for having shared your amazing ideas. Now, again, all of these are going to be somehow put into virtual learning. But once again, you're amazing, and thank you so much. Really, you're amazing. So what it is my pleasure right now to hand over to the next team, and this is to Generation Amazing.
Thank you very much, Heather and team. That was very wonderful to listen to. And there is a strong connection with what you have just presented. So Nora and Afan, you talked more about post-conflict, how vulnerable women are and girls are in conflict periods or in post-conflict periods. And we've got a case study that links to that. And so this is our Generation Amazing program with International Federation for Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And a warm welcome. I can see that the numbers of participants keep fluctuating, but we are steady. So for those that have just joined us, a welcome to you, our participants. Depending where you are joining us from, some of you could be midnight now, or some of you it's just mid-afternoon. So we have two organizations that are going to be with us. These are global organizations that are working with us. This is a program called YABC Football for Development. And we've got Generation Amazing, a human and social legacy program of the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022. And the other program that has collaborated with Generation Amazing is International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Now, these two organizations have come together to work collaboratively on a global partnership. So this strongly links us to SDG 17 when we look at global partnerships, and to be more specific, looking at capacity building within that global partnership and multi-stakeholder collaborations. This session takes a case study approach to showcase processes of co-creation and co-delivery of a hybrid curriculum. And this curriculum has been delivered in different spaces. So we have classroom and football pitch spaces, utilizing both online and face-to-face delivery. And Nora just talked about situations where you have to deliver because you are not on the ground or there is conflict within that area. Can you deliver in a different format that doesn't put the deliverers or the facilitators at risk? And our project does kind of give examples of that. This pilot project was delivered by both Generation Amazing and IFRC in 5 pilot countries. This was Argentina, Uganda, Iraq, and Myanmar. We've got a representative from Myanmar with us. It highlights South-to-South partnerships in capacity building. Now, for our session, we've got 2 key objectives that we would like to achieve. The first one is to highlight how these global South-South partnerships employ mechanisms aimed at sharing expertise and build capacity to respond to local area needs. And the second one of that we have is to demonstrate co-creation and co-delivery of a hybrid curriculum in an era of COVID, and what is it that we have learned. And I'm joined today by 3 panelists who will shortly introduce themselves. So I'll first hand over to Mr. Michael Richards to introduce himself. Michael?
Hi, Davis. Yeah, thanks for that introduction. My name's Michael Richardson. I'm one of the 2 master coaches at Generation Amazing. And my role revolves around working with partners to develop content for the Football for Development program that we're delivering. So yeah, that's my That's my role.
Thank you, Michael. We go to Rima.
Good afternoon and good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Davis. My name is Rima Chopra. I'm working at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, the IFRC, which is a membership-based organization made up of 192 Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies and representing 14 million volunteers across the globe. And I'm working within the global education team as the technical lead for this YBC and F4D project that we delivered in partnership with Generation Amazing. And I'm also an international master trainer for this Youth as Agents of Behavioral Change YBC program. And I support our management education programs and portfolio, more broadly speaking. Thank you so much and very glad to be here tonight.
Thank you very much, Rima. And next we have Nimpyu to introduce herself.
Hello. Kriti from Myanmar. This is Nimpyu, and I work for the Myanmar Red Cross Society as the Deputy Director of the Organization and Development Department. I'm also one of the main facilitators for this project. Very nice to see you all.
Thank you very much, Nimpyu, Mike, and Rima. Now, in my introduction, I did emphasize that this is a project that is called YABC F4D. So that stands for Youth as Agents of Behavioral Change and Football for Development. Now, for the sake of our audience out there, Mike, we first come to you. Could you please define what is football for development and how does that apply to Generation Amazing? We know that it is attached to a sport mega event, which is the World Cup, and we know that there is sport for sport's sake. But what role does sport play in terms of social change? So to begin with, what is sport for development?
Thanks, Davis. Yeah, so football for development, it's different from football development, which is about growing the game, increasing participation, etc. So football for development focuses on delivering non-sporting outcomes and development of life skills, which are necessary for participants to achieve success in life, like beyond the football pitch. So looking at that decision making and things like this. So for example, football for development aims at making contributions towards the Sustainable Development Goals, such as gender equality, safe space creation for young people, to enjoy physical activity, engagement, and this results in active lifestyles, contributes to their lifelong participation in an active lifestyle. So for Generation Amazing, our football for development, our methodology is based on a twin-tracked approach, which promotes both sports skill and life skill development. So we focus on ensuring participants have an opportunity to improve the sports skills so that they can enjoy their participation and realize progress and remain engaged in the activities we provide. You know, their engagement gives Generation Amazing an opportunity to build relationships between community coaches, participants, which is vital for influencing behavior change.
Thank you very much, Mike. And for the sake again of our audience, sport has been recognized by the United Nations as a very effective tool that can contribute to human development. And we have our partners who have worked with a global humanitarian organization. So Rima, what is, in your title, you told us about youth as agents of behavioral change. What is YABC?
That's sure, David. So the YABC stands for Youth as Agents of Behavioral Change, and it is the IFRC's global humanitarian education program on the promotion of a culture of non-violence and peace by empowering young people with social emotional life skills such as active listening, empathy, critical thinking, non-violent communication, personal resilience, self-awareness, and inner peace. And it does so with the view to build their capacity to live together harmoniously and be ethical leaders who can really walk the talk through inner change and inspire a positive transformation of mindsets, attitudes, and behaviors towards respect for diversity, intercultural dialogue, social inclusion, gender equality, nonviolence, and peace. And this is our unique contribution to global citizenship education and the development of the 21st century skills. And as such, it also contributes to achieving several SDGs, in particular SDG target 4.7 and SDG 16. And I would say that this very innovative and transformative initiative, which was created in 2008 by youth, for youth, and with youth, is continuously expanding and implemented today in more than 145 countries, thanks to our global network of 3,700 trainers and peer educators around the world. And today, this initiative has been combined with Football for Development to form this hybrid curriculum, which has been pilot tested in the 4 countries that you mentioned.
Thank you very much, Rima, for that. Michael, you have given characteristics of your program as similar as Rima, you've talked about very good characteristics of the YABC. Now, you've brought the 2 different programs together. I'd like to start with you, Michael. What is the added value of working with a humanitarian organization like IFRC and delivering a new program now, YABC, Football for Development?
Yeah, thanks. It's a really important question. I think it's a really good question to ask. The Generation Amazing, we've got the Football for Development program. It's been developed by experts in the field of sport for development and the education sector. Adding the humanitarian sector to this only enriches the content and the access, the network that we can operate. Our pedagogical approach is one that intends to promote critical consciousness, critical thinking, and practical involvement in activities. So working with IFRC, our Football for Development curriculum has benefited from the reflective processes which are embedded within the YABC curriculum, and it's done in 3 stages. So the first of the 3 reflective stages is about understanding the experience. So from the perspective of the participant, and this is the conversation element of the practical games. So we're asking the participants to reflect on the understanding of their experience in the game. We're then asking them to reflect on relating it to real life. So what does the experience on the pitch look like in real life? And then applying it to the future. So what are the skills that they've actually learned on the football pitch? What are the situations they've experienced which can be relevant in applying those skills into the future? So like I said, our pedagogical approach aims at empowering young people to understand the current circumstances, and through the strengths adopted from the YABC approach, the reflective processes have strengthened our twin tracked approach. So I mean, it's a real, we've identified some real strengths, and also the element of the person as well. There's some fantastic people working with IFRC and all of the different national societies and within the IFRC head offices. So the personal element is extremely strong too, Davis.
Thank you very much for that, Michael. Remember, working with an organization like Generation Amazing attached to a sport mega event, the World Cup Qatar 2022, what added value has it brought to your work as IFRC?
Thank you, Davis. And as you mentioned earlier, it's true that the YBC program is indeed well established and a popular initiative within the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement and also beyond. But I would say that the main or most important added value of bringing the YBC and Football for Development programs together is that football and sport for development and peace in general is a great entry point, and it has power and immense potential to attract and engage youth and communities, especially vulnerable ones who may at times be harder to engage through other types of activities. It represents a great community engagement tool, which also being really full of potential as a pedagogical approach. And although YBC already entailed sport component as part of its creative platforms for community engagement, I think that this integration enables to address physical and mental health issues and promote healthy and active lifestyles in an even more diverse way. And last but not least, this project, by bringing together the YBC and F4D, provided the opportunity for some of our national societies to either build or either strengthen key local strategic partnerships at national and local levels in the area of sport and football, as it allowed to open new doors for collaboration and local stakeholders in this field. So for sure, some of our national societies were already very much engaged in the sports field, but some less. And so this partnership development element contributes to ensure sustainability as well as long-term holistic impact based on community needs.
Thank you very much, Rima and Michael, for those responses. Now, we are focusing on SDG 17, and it talks more about capacity building. Most of the work and the literature within Sport for Development has looked at that tokenism of working with communities. The two of you have worked together and have co-created a curriculum. Could you please provide details of the processes of co-creating the YABC F4D curriculum? Mike, we start with you.
Yeah, thanks. So as I mentioned before, Davis, I think the Generation Amazing as the Football for Development program has been developed, and the content and the methodology and the philosophy has been developed by experts in the field of sport for development and the education sector. So, like, again, adding the humanitarian sector to this, it adds credibility, not just to the content, but to the process in which is produced, the learning that happens, the development of it. So this is one. The curriculum has themes. The Football for Development curriculum has themes that relate to the SDGs. So, for example, gender equality. So SDG 5, reducing inequalities. SDG 10, or promotion of good health and well-being. SDG 3, to mention a few. And obviously with the SDG 17, which is what we're focusing on. Working in partnership with IFRC, the co-creation was a place of creativity, negotiation, identification of shared values, and establishing mutual benefits. And I think this particular point as well comes back to what Maria Biela mentioned earlier when she talked about different tools within a mindset. This resonated with me and into this kind of process of working in partnership. So I'm working collaboratively between sports-based organizations and humanitarian sector. It requires shared values and a recognition of the strengths and competencies that each organization was bringing to the table regarding working with young people. So as individuals, we brought our individual skills to this process, and we believed in what we were doing. You know, this wasn't just a project that we put together, understood the process and delivered. We had to find solutions, we had to identify strengths, and we had to share content that was developed. It took a long time to develop. So I hope that answers your question, Davis. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Mike. Rima, co-creation for you, what processes did you go with? You already have a well-established program with already themes in there. How was that negotiation? Mike talked about creativity, negotiation, and mutual benefits. Could you give us more details about those processes here?
Yeah, sure. And I completely agree with Mike on this co-creation process. I think that, first of all, it was really key for us to identify our shared values. And I would also add that not only we identified our shared values, but we also identified the key interpersonal skills that allows one to really embody and demonstrate those values in our daily lives. And for me, one of the most important points in the co-creation process was that we ourselves, as trainers and coaches of these programs and as representatives of these organizations, we also applied the same interpersonal skills such as active listening, critical thinking, collaborative negotiation that we integrated in our hybrid curriculum. So not only preaching this for other youth and other communities, but really embodying and applying these in our relationships, in our interactions, once again highlighting the importance of walking the talk at all levels. And this was really crucial, in my view, for identifying our strategic synergies and our common thematic issues, as Mike has mentioned some of those, which connect with the SDGs, of course. for understanding each other's programs, essence, vision, unique strength, and complementarity, and really leveraging that to reinforce learning outcomes, while we still ensured an alignment in our pedagogical approaches, which are both holistic, experiential, and learner-centered, which are both focused on empowering and engaging young people as agents of change to bring solutions to community problems. We are tackling very similar thematic issues and developing similar social-emotional skills, but we are doing it from different angles, let's say, which is, in my view, precisely what makes the unique strength of our hybrid curriculum and what makes this partnership so powerful and effective in contributing to the SDGs by leveraging the critical and unifying and transformative power of both humanitarian education and sport for development and peace. However, it's also important to note, I think, that our co-created curriculum is not prescriptive, but it's a guiding tool, as our facilitators in the 4 countries had to adapt and contextualize the sessions to their local setting. And this was even more the case due to the implementation challenges related to COVID-19 and the political instability in some of the contexts, which required us to be even more creative, flexible, and continuously adapt, digitalize, and re-envision the methodology. For example, in Argentina and Myanmar, we had to suddenly change our plans to deliver our training of facilitators entirely online rather than face-to-face. And so this continuous co-creation and adaptation process was not just us at the global level or macro level, it was really conducted together with our Red Cross and Red Crescent national societies, project teams, trainers, and volunteers. And I think that tapping into this incredible network, which is present in virtually every community on Earth with unparalleled community-based expertise, is what allowed us to create a truly tailored approach, adapted to local challenges and specific needs while maintaining the essence of the project.
Rima, thank you very much for that. And you stress there more when we look at SDG 17, that talks more about strengthening means of implementation. Now, what you and Mike did is at that macro level, at the design level. But Nimpyu, who's with us, and welcome Nimpyu to this debate. You've been quiet there, and you are at the grassroots, working with communities as a national society in Myanmar, and it relates to the previous 2 discussions we've had. Human security and an area which has maybe political instability. So how was co-creation processes, you as a national society working with the communities? Nimpyu, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you also for the opportunity to bring the voice of the micro level process. And if I have to explain, let me explain how we, Myanmar Red Cross Society, implemented the project. So first, we start with the 30 facilitator from the 6 different places through the 12-day online training. As explained before, the training meant to be in the physical, but we have to contact through the online because of the COVID-19 situation and other political instability. So these 12-day online training give us an innovative and a very long training we conducted through online. And after that, they have to be transformed into the 44 participants each in the 6 different places. So it means like we reach 164 participants through our trained daddy facilitator. So, and also regarding with the methodology we use in the YBC Football for Development, it's different from our education system, as our is more on the traditional top-down, and for the hybrid curriculum, it gives the opportunity for our young generation to practice with the bottom-up approach with the experiential learning, and also the participant-centered methodology. So in addition to that, when the trained facilitator have to multiply to the hybrid curriculum, they have to transform the online curriculum fit into the physical context, which is one of the challenges they face. So after the training, the project is designed, the young facilitator and the participants to lead and implement the community-based micro projects. And as you may know, like Myanmar has been undergoing a political crisis with civil unrest leading to the humanitarian crisis affecting people across many parts of the country, and the community-based micro project implemented by our Red Cross volunteer are designed upon the needs of the community affected through the civil unrest. And the different area that we address through the micro project is gender equality, women empowerment, access to education and spark, infrastructure such as school fancy activity, awareness raising campaign on the climate change, environmental protection, and provided a first aid training and hygiene promotion activity in the IDP camp, and also the psychosocial support activity for children and women staying in IDP camp. We also face many of the challenges throughout all the project implementation, such as like limited banking system, which made us difficult to withdraw the cash, and also the movement restriction because of the COVID-19 and the civil unrest, which made us to delay to the project activity. So with the good teamwork, we overcame those challenges, and finally the result is worth the effort. It is that because the project is not benefiting for the community, it also brought the young people, our young generation to have the social connected net, which means like they feel connected to the communities and others in their social environment. And also that it brings the positive youth and community connection, which provide the young people to the sense of the pride and willingness to participate in the voluntary activity, as they believe that their effort to improve their community. And through the process, we MRCS also found the strategy to bring our Red Cross youth as leader and decision maker within our organizational structure that we are aiming for. So I'm also want to stress again here that the project bring our young generation to be adequate with social, moral, and cognitive and psychosocial competency through the different project activity. And it make up for them to begin the aware and take up their civic responsibility, change their attitude to what further carry, and sharing and motivate them to believe in themselves. The YBC and Football for Development approach is one of the best strategies to positively empower youth in the state, in the society. And thank you, David, back to you.
Thanks very much, Nimpyo. Like you ending with that strong social mobilization power of sport, of football, that's to engage young people and to work with young people. And within there, you have talked more again of the vulnerability of women and girls, and other people have talked about that. And they have looked at gender mainstreaming and that it is important. Now, Generation Amazing has a unit, and that unit is taught also on this program, which is particularly focusing on gender, and to stress really that every program that we develop should have that gender approach, gender angle, so that we don't exacerbate the vulnerability of women in any community where we go. Thank you very much, Michael, Nimpyo, and Rima. I can see Mauricio has come on screen telling me, Davis, you better wrap up now because we are going into the next session. Mauricio, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davis. Thank you. Thank you all for the interesting discussion, presentations, many topics, and many perspectives also on the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And for this section now, we have a joint reflection discussion, which means that we have one question to
Mauricio.
Yes.
Can I interrupt a little bit? I apologize. There it
Sorry.
comes. There it is. Thank you.
I'm so sorry for that. I'm so sorry for that. Yeah. So for this section, we have one question for the next three panelists that is about the relevance of the topics discussed so far on the promotion and the achievement of the SDGs. And then I invite Les Sim, the Executive Director of International Forum for Understanding, and Maria Biela Alonso, the Regional Officer, Starson Project, UNODC, and Davis, academic advisor, Generation Amazing. So Les, I start with you. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much, Mauricio, and thank you for some really interesting and very inspiring 3 groups of presentations. Obviously, some like SDG 30 that I'm very familiar with, and the people involved in that. So, but all of them were very inspiring. And it's a big thing to be able to start off to sum all of that up in 3 minutes. But what I've done, I've picked up some things that I was going to say. But actually, I've picked up also what from each of the groups. For a start, we looked at SDGs 3, 5, 8, 10, 11, 13, 16, and 17, and we touched on all of those. Some of the other SDGs, we obviously, like SDG 4, we intimated. So that shows that whole interconnectivity of the SDGs. And I think that's one of the importance. We were looking at how to promote and achieve, and that's the key word, to achieve the SDGs. As Heather mentioned earlier, one of the main focuses of the foundation is implementation. I worked heavily on the MDGs in embassies in the Balkans and South America and Nepal to try and deliver those. And as we all know, they succeeded in some ways, but failed in others. So the SDG 2030 was an opportunity to go beyond that and continue to develop. So the implementation is the key thing. The other thing that was mentioned is that it's an intergenerational issue. It's not a single generation issue. And I think the speakers today, all of us, including the panelists, cover that. And I know I've got a 4-year-old grandchild that I'll be bringing up in all, and I'm sure you'll be learning it at school. So it's an intergeneration solution. I don't like referring it to a problem. I like it to be a solution, because that's what we're looking at, is a solution. We also touched on, trafficking alone is worth about 850 billion a year as the last estimate. And over 70% of those are women or children. And I would say that's a low estimate in some cases. So once again, looking at practical solutions like legislation, banking, and other practical solutions to counter organized crime was brought up, and some ideas were presented for that. The other aim of the SDGs was to leave no one behind. All of them are aimed at leaving no one behind. And once again, I think very important, which was touched on, is those with lived experience, who are not only there to present solutions, but also to take part in developing things for the future. So it's very important to incorporate that. The other aspect I'd like to hit on is the human security. Now, recently we did an event on nuclear nexus and climate change. And once again, that focused on the human aspects of that, because everything, to get people to understand the SDGs, bring it to a personal level, bring it to an individual level. And things like Generation Amazing and the projects you're doing, that's what it's doing. It's bringing it to a level where everyone can understand it. You don't have to study it to understand it and do something. And I'll just finish actually by saying that we're now roughly halfway through the SDG 2030 period. We've got 8 years left. So one of those things I'd like to point out is something that Heather asked the panel, which was, what can we do today? And what I would say when we're looking at implementation is, it's every little thing that somebody can think of that you can do. It doesn't have to be big, it's just something, and get the message out, which is what we're doing today. So it's that action and implementation. And I know I'd like to hand over to Maria now, and I know she wants to talk about the very important aspect of gender integration and equality, which is extremely, extremely important. And I believe we're nowhere near that yet. So thank you. I'll hand over to you, Maurizio.
Oh, thank you, Les. Thank you, Les. I just pass the floor to Maria. Please, Maria.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you, Les. That was brilliant joint reflection. I think all the panelists have been absolutely brilliant in terms of laying out transformative ideas and partnerships, either with government, NGOs, and international humanitarian agencies. How to close the gap between the written policies and the implementation of policies. Dear Heather, Noor, and Ana Laura have touching bases about this point. I really like to underline the importance of designing transformative training versus transactional training. To me, that I mentor and train, and I have the honor actually to mentor and train law enforcement, training is not the transaction of knowledge, but instead giving police officers and prosecutors the opportunity to devise their operational routes, standardized protocols and instructions as a reflective process. For instance, I encourage critical thinking in the understanding of the UN Migrant Smuggling Protocol and the UN Convention Against Transnational Crime. The co-creation process and shared values is key in adult learning. And I see now from Professor Banda, Rema, and Michael that we resonate the same learning strategies and the objective of encouraging agents of change. StarSome, I'm going through a StarSome project as a matter of examples, practical examples, and I would like maybe maybe in questions and answers, if you have any doubt to dig deeper on that. We gather countries from origin and transit to enhance information and intelligence sharing to counter migrant smuggling real time. So I completely agree with Christian on his comment about the changes of information should be real time to counteract organized crime. And yeah, indeed, 2 months delay, it's probably too much if we want to fight organized crime seriously. As I said, partnership with other UNODC programs that they target gender equality, such it is GLOW Act in Asia, help us to build a community of experts and practitioners more aware of SDG 5, SDG 10, SDG 8, and 16 and 17. We like to include civil society, government instances, and also law enforcement in the design of policies. I remember at the beginning of StarSome in Costa Rica, I asked my manager, my project manager of StarSome, and we have here a strong network of police women. They are called Pancha Carrasco police women. And I asked him, do you think we can target this new group of as beneficiaries of mentoring? And he said, yes, I would like them to give their opinions, to share from this women network perspective about migrant smuggling and aggravated crimes. So we like to learn from all diversity, right? Said that, and if I have time, Mauricio, you tell me, I'd like to clarify the difference between migrant smuggling, aggravated migrant smuggling, and then trafficking human beings. You tell me, Mauricio.
1 minute, Maria.
Okay, I'll go fast and furious. It's fine. So men and women, we have different migrant smuggling and trafficking experiences, right? We all have mentioned that in this panel. Justice system needs to start from there. We don't see things that we don't look for. So if you don't look for it, you don't see it, you don't record it, you don't have any information, and you cannot act upon it or design policies. In short, migrant smuggling is when the smuggler facilitates the irregular entry or stay in a country that you are not national. Aggravated migrant smuggler, that it's actually one of the main purposes of StarSome, it's identifying the gender and human rights vulnerations. Aggravated migrant smuggling is when the smuggler put the life of migrant on risk or involves inhuman treatment and exploitation. Trafficking, as Heather's team said, is synonym of slavery. So we connect the aggravated migrant smuggling with modern slavery and SDG 8 when the Article 6.3 of our migrant smuggling protocol states that smuggling of migrants, it should be prosecuted as an aggravated form when the person who is who is migrating suffered inhuman treatment or other forms of exploitation. I think I hope I clarify, these three concepts. Normally we are in between migrant smuggling or trafficking. I encourage you to see this other line of investigation, and it's aggravated migrant smuggling, to see a more holistic picture of the crime that affect migrants. Thank you.
Excellent, Maria. Thank you very much. Davis, the floor is yours.
Oh, Maria has taken all the time, so I'm going to be brief. And I'd like to emphasize, Mike would know that I'm obsessed with South-South cooperation. And in all the stuff that we have looked at, we know that majority of those countries which we encourage in that South-to-South cooperation, majority of them would see them as resource-poor settings. And those resource-poor settings have got those aspects of vulnerability of those communities that are located within those countries. And so within SDG 17, there is an encouragement of South-South cooperation. We have had projects here that have talked more about policy coordination and policy coherence. And there are countries within what would say the Global South that have worked really well because they are tackling that problem. And Liz, you talked there about giving voice to the victims or people that are experiencing that particular hardship. So those Global South countries, bringing them to the stage and giving them a microphone, or utilizing what our first part talked about, journalists. What is the role of the media, and how is the media going to those that are experiencing that problem and giving them a platform to kind of their story to be heard, and so that that advocacy and bringing people, and for us within sport is how do you utilize the power of sport to join in the advocacy, in the activism for those that are going through these struggles of vulnerability to human trafficking and all the sort. And that would call for cooperation between those countries and helping with policies within those countries. But it is very important. And you've talked more, again, SDG 17 looks at that relationship, multi-stakeholder relationship. So the public, the private, and the voluntary sector. And we are representatives of those sectors here. And what role do we play for our organizations? There are certain platforms in certain countries, or the environment is very good in certain countries, and they have developed these partnerships, the private, public, and voluntary sector partnerships. But in other countries, it is difficult because maybe of those political instability within those nations. So thank you very much, and I hope we will play our role here in terms of tackling human vulnerability to trafficking and the crime that is there. And I hope that as a role ourselves as a sport organization and REMA as humanitarian organization, partnerships like this can continue to contribute towards the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davis. I would like to call now Nancy Houston to moderate the Q&A section. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. My name is Nancy Houston. I am a human rights lawyer, and a very warm welcome to this Q&A session. Of course, we are joined by incredible panelists, Dr. Banda, Dr. Mia, and Heather Walkhust. And so I will start directly with you, Dr. Banda. You mentioned a case study, and on your case study, you have discussed co-creation at both macro and micro levels. Would you be able to tell us what challenges were experienced in each of the 4 case studies?
A very difficult one, and I'm happy that I still have Rema with us here. And Rema, I would like, again, in that co-creation spirit, so that we co-create this answer together. Now, we designed a hybrid curriculum before COVID happened. And Mike and I and Rema thought we would be traveling to different parts of the world, Argentina, Uganda, Iraq, and deliver this program. But then COVID happened, and so we had to make adjustments. And those adjustments, the benefit of it has been pedagogically things that we have learned that you could deliver through online, and how cost effective that has been because capacity building is more about education and training and providing that support to local communities. And we've been able to do that through online mechanisms. But beyond that, there's been other challenges. And so I'm going to hand to Rima to contribute to that, and Nempio if she has anything to add to that. Rima?
Yes, thank you so much for this question. And I think that basically it's a little bit what my dear colleague Nempio and Davis have already mentioned. The main challenges we faced in each of the countries were actually related to either, first of all, COVID-19 restrictions, travel restrictions, but also that had exacerbated other challenges. So not only the fact that we, as international trainers, we could not, for example, deliver the first training. So we had to coach our own trainers and network of national trainers online, which is something quite difficult if you look at our pedagogical approach, which really requires normally to be face-to-face to be able to fully explore it, if I may say. But also then there were in-country challenges. So there were restrictions of people not being able to regroup. So our hybrid curriculum delivery was also put on hold in many of the contexts because there were restrictions and simply people were not allowed to maybe meet, more than 5 people could not be regrouped. So basically that really put on hold a couple of our phases. But I would also say in other cases, we also had some kind of political instability, which exacerbated other challenges. So for example, as we saw in the case of Myanmar, there was a limited banking system. And when you look at the meaning of that, meaning that there is a limited also cash, or there's a cash shortage in the country. What does that mean? Even if you think of aspects like translation and going forward, everything is put on stop because you don't have the basics there. So there were a lot of working around these challenges. So it's not, we cannot say really all the 4 contexts, I would say, have had those similar challenges. It's very, very similar. And that, if I may just elaborate one aspect here, is that this type of challenges, what I could notice in the 4 countries is that it really impacted the psychosocial well-being and health of the young people. And I think this project then came to address the challenge, which was not really, it was not expected that it will address it in this way, but I think that really this has brought some kind of light in the darkness in the midst of these uncertainties, and it has become a point of reference for the youth in the 4 countries.
Thank you very much, Rima. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Rema and Dr. Banda, for your insightful and very passionate comments. I will move directly to you, Dr. Mia. And in your talk, you advanced excellent points on organized crime. Can you please expand more on how organized crime leverages vulnerable communities in their businesses?
Thanks, Nancy. That's actually a great question, a great point. So we have been looking a bit at this issue in our research, especially in the framework of our armed conflict survey report, which covers all different situations of armed violence across the world. So in the case of Central America, which is it's a region where we have actually looked with particular attention, given the confluence of, obviously violence, but also climate vulnerability, another kind of exacerbator, I would say, to, for people to be forcibly displaced, even being displaced within their own countries, or also as Maria mentioned, in terms of migration and so on and so forth. So of course it is this forced displacement create vulnerable communities. We have seen it. We actually looked at the internal first. I would say the first leg of when people is displaced, which is normally from the rural areas to the urban area. And the urban area is actually a very dangerous, I would say, place for vulnerable communities, because you tend to find, especially if you look at Central America, but in many other geographies, you tend to find a big concentration of criminal gangs and criminality in many different ways. So what we've seen is that those gangs are actually very, very from one point of view, really their ability to actually move across different type of criminal activity according to profits and feasibility. So in the sense of, obviously smuggling across borders is one of the way in which they actually use or leverage people in vulnerable situation. But also, if you look more, as I was saying, at the urban context, there it's really about forced criminality, right? So in terms of really preying on vulnerable community and notably, as I said, as I alluded earlier on, youth, but also women, children, LGBT communities, and so on and so forth, and really forcing them into criminality, be it, obviously drug trafficking or in the case of women, prostitution, human slavery, recruitment in terms of gangs. So I think it's very important to look at how forced criminality, and that's the point we had in our session, but also I heard so many fantastic, actually, solution or actionable solution for all those issues having to do with the sustainable development goal. And part of it is really how do we protect those community? How do we work with maybe city authorities and organization at the city level to really prevent and create the opportunity for those vulnerable communities to be protected, but also to have other opportunities in that respect, and so for being a bit stronger in that sense. So we finish with that because I know there is still quite a lot to be said. Thanks, Nancy.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Mia, for your useful contributions. I believe that they will be really necessary for future undertakings. Thank you so much. And I will move directly to you, Heather. We have a question directly from the chat right now. And it's, as a successful business person and seasoned digital expert, and in the spirit of SDG 17, I would like to know how people like me can support the SDGs and related topics.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that. I've been loving this conversation that's been going on, ever since, I guess, for the past hour. I think that is SDGs in motion. Frankly, you've got this individual, Alex Karnatowski, and then Madalena Bott, who's doing an incredible job, just back and forth with different ideas on that topic. This is SDGs in motion, SDG 17. So anyway, I've been loving this conversation. My 2 cents, very quickly. For one, thank you for being here. As a business person, I think a lot of times it is just somehow limited only in terms of a financial contribution, but that is so not the idea that is possible in SDG 17. Is there toxicity in the supply chain, for example? Is the supply chain sustainable? And you have clearly, as a digital expert, it sounds like you have a very sustainable business model also, and that you care a lot. That skill set really, really can be very, very helpful in many of the things, for example, that my team was talking about, getting the message out, for SEO or SEM or whatever. So I think that just the fact that you're here and you're asking questions and you want to get engaged is fabulous. And thank you so much for having done that. Now, there are really concrete groups, and I'll just throw one out in interest of time. Definitely check out the Global Compact. This is 16,000 companies all across the world. 150 countries or something, and they have committed to the SDGs. There are reporting mechanisms in place. Those are good people to do business with, and so the more that we look at each other in terms of our deeper levels of skill and intersectionality, as opposed to simply this is where we can get money or whatever, then the quicker we will get to 2030 successfully. And anyway, so thank you so much for that amazing conversation. But in that regard, my final thing is, I would like to invite all of the amazing speakers, for example, the youth representative experts, reach out to some of these others that you might have heard today you know, and make a connection. And I would like to ask the same, you know, the opposite. If you heard, you know, some of, reach out to each other today. This energy cannot end here. It isn't just a presentation. It is the start of connections that actually really matter. That is SDG 17 in motion. So, and thank you so much, Nancy. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing the groups as well. I would like to thank you, the panelists, Dr. Mia, Dr. Banda, and Heather, for this very brief Q&A session, but nonetheless very worth it. And I will hand over the program back to you, Mauricio.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you all. So we are run out of time to conclude the session. So it was a pleasure to have you all in this panel. It was a great discussion. But then for concluding this session, I would like to invite Professor Maria Teresa, Dr. Davis Banda, and Dr. Heather for their concluding remarks. So first of all, Maria Teresa, you have the floor. Okay, 1 minute. 2 minutes. I can add one more.
May I say, actually, instead of me, it's going to be Noor Baraka. And so that will be your speaker, Noor Baraka.
Okay, thank you, Heather. So Maria Teresa, please.
Okay, thank you, Mauricio, and thank you all. I want to take back as a concluding remark one of the questions that Davis was mentioning, like what is our role? And from you, peace, our role is education. We have this slogan: if you want peace, you educate and you work for peace. And that's a thing that has been common in all the panels, like how do we implement these strategies to educate for peace, to work for peace, to create alliances for peace. And I think this is a great way in which we can implement SDGs. So I want to invite you all, because I know some of you have been fluctuating, maybe were not at the beginning of the session, to go to our website and check our master programs, our doctorate, because we have a critical thinking initiative, we have peace education, we have a work on sports and education and peace building in different places. We are a local institution because we're based in Costa Rica, but we are global. We have projects all over the world. We have an office in Addis Ababa, we have offices in New York, The Hague, Vienna, and so it will be great if you can connect with us and further this SDGs implementation from different points of view, because this is the way we can create and build peace. So thank you all for being here, and I go back to Mauricio.
Thank you, Maria Teresa. Professor Davis.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mauricio. We would like to propose ourselves that some of you might have not heard about the role that sport can play in contributing towards a sustainable development goals. Now that we have shared what we could do, how we could partner with a humanitarian organization and develop a curriculum that is delivered through classroom mechanisms and football pitch mechanisms, addressing the psychosocial aspects with young people, and how we have made that contribution by bringing two great brands, global brands, together to deliver that. We would like you to recommend us wherever you go and you hear people talk about the role that sport can contribute towards the SDGs, and that is part again of SDG 17 about global partnerships. And to partner with Generation Amazing, we already have that kudos that comes with the World Cup. So we are putting ourselves out there as one of the programs that is developing, a young program and developing really well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And to present SDG, Noor Barakat. Yes, that's right, Heather?
That's okay. Right. I'm here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you all once again for the wonderful insights. I can say confidently that they will leave us with more hope and motivation and inspiration to continue our work. I've been involved in the SDGs 2030 and the International Forum for Understanding since they both were founded. And in such short time, we've been able to accomplish so much. And I believe it's partly and significantly actually because of the intergenerational and intersectional nature of our work. So we live the SDGs, and we believe and we realize how important and significant it is to build strong partnerships. And I will second again what Les and the other panelists and Heather also mentioned, that involving persons with lived experiences, persons on the ground, agency and collective capacity building in local community are crucial and at the core of our work. And so yeah, in conclusion, we look forward already to cooperating with all of the other groups in this session, and to working together in the present and in the future, for the present and for the future. Thank you very much.
I think that this is a great message. No Borake is for the present and for the future. So in name of all institutions, and I want to thank you all for your participation, to all panelists and all to the team that is on the stage, back the stage of organizing this event, this session. So thank you all, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Mauricio. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Rima.